Maverick News presents The Rick Walker Show. Defrag your mind.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Maverick family. Good evening, new viewers from far and wide globally. Welcome back to the Maverick News Channel. I am your host, Rick Walker, and we have a lot to share with you tonight, some of which you will find concerning, other stuff you'll find disturbing. It's another daily dose of doom and gloom, I guess, in many respects, unfortunately. But I would caution everyone not to get too depressed upon hearing today's news, for I know from having worked in the news business as long as I have that a lot of these stories tend to be overly focused on. I'll put it that way. Not all of them, but yes, some of them. What's going on here tonight? Well, our top story, the Supreme Court of Canada is refusing to hear a case, a constitutional challenge from an unvaxxed woman who has been denied a life-saving transplant because she is unvaxxed. We'll tell you about it. Also, last night, we told you that the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, Pierre Poilievre, had embarked on a marathon speech, a filibuster in the House of Commons in an attempt to block the Liberal NDP federal government's budget. He spoke for over 3.5 hours straight, and we will bring you some of the highlights from that tonight. Also, those wildfires continue to burn, and of course, that's what I'm talking about when I say that there may be, a lot of media attention focused on the A story, and that is this story. No question, on both sides of the border tonight, on the Canadian and U.S. sides, there is a whole heaping helping of mainstream media coverage and a lot of concern about air quality and smoke. Also, the Prime Minister of Canada, and a lot of Canadian news tonight. Sorry, folks, if you're watching from the U.S. side, but our politicians are in overdrive up here. The Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, on Parliament Hill, raising a pride flag today. We'll show you what happened there. And back to the UFOs, and this is something that our American viewers will take note of. I guess this was in Vegas. A family there, after seeing with many other people something falling from the sky, a bright light, possibly some sort of a aerial vehicle crashing or something in the Vegas area. And now they're saying they saw an 8-foot tall creature in their backyard. I kid you not. I cannot believe I'm talking about this stuff on this program. 2 nights in a row, we're talking about unidentified flying objects. Yeah. And this coming in the wake of the government whistleblower who claims the federal government in the United States has been keeping and hiding information on alien spacecraft and actual aliens. Also, President Biden today held a joint news conference with Prime Minister Rishi Sunak of the United Kingdom. We may have time to bring you some highlights from that. And what else can I tell you? Yeah. Well, we might touch a little bit on the by-election going on out in Manitoba if we have time. Not sure if we'll get to that or not, but we'll show you some of the polling from out there. And those are sort of the main stories we're going to touch on this evening. So a lot on tap. You're not going to want to miss any of it. because all this stuff is super engaging. We'll be right back after this.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching. Fear not the storm, for truth is on our side. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, I'm back, and as you can see, this is one of the mainstream media articles touching on this Supreme Court story tonight. This one from CTV, and they're acknowledging that the Supreme Court is not going to hear this case of this unvaccinated woman who has been denied an organ transplant because she is unvaccinated. The Supreme Court of Canada will not hear the appeal of Sheila Lewis is her name, Sheila Annette Lewis. We've talked about Sheila's case here on the program before. She was diagnosed with a terminal disease back in 2018, and she's been told she will not live unless she gets an organ transplant. Apparently, because of the legal case, she's not permitted to disclose to the public exactly what her medical need is or what the condition is exactly, but needless to say, she requires a life-saving organ transplant. She was scheduled to appear on this program at one point, but ended up being too ill to get through it. So that interview did not happen. It may happen at some point in the future, but I know she remains frail, and our thoughts and prayers are with Sheila tonight as she receives this disappointing news. She has refused to take the vaccine. And she has said, and these are her words, she says, I ought to have a choice about what goes into my body, and a life-saving treatment cannot be denied to me because I chose not to take as she says, an experimental treatment for a condition which I do not have and which I may never have. And that is what was outlined in an affidavit that was submitted to court. So this case was dismissed by an Alberta court, which has said that the Charter has no application to clinical treatment decisions. The Charter of Rights and Freedoms is what they're referring to, in particular for doctors establishing preconditions for organ transplants. I disagree. Justice Paul Betzels ruled that the standard of care must be the same for all potential recipients, or it could result in, his words, medical chaos. I disagree with that strongly. So the Alberta Court of Appeal upheld that decision, and so she appealed all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada. And now they're not willing to listen or hear the case. So she has been represented by the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, and their lawyers are saying that she is deeply disappointed that the Supreme Court of Canada has decided not to hear her case. She had hoped the justice would prevail in the courts for herself and other unvaccinated transplant candidates across Canada. That's the statement from the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. So Lewis recently filed a separate legal action against Alberta Health Services, an Alberta hospital, and the transplant doctors who are supposed to do the operation on her, but she's being denied health care. And of course, because there is only one healthcare system, a government-run healthcare system, she has no other choice. In Canada, it's the only place she can go. She has been removed from the transplant list, and she is basically on death watch now. And I personally, and I'm editorializing here, I think that is cruel. It's inhumane. There is no valid reason, in my view, that she should not be given the care that she needs, the life-saving care that she needs. And she should not be forced, in my opinion, to accept any kind of treatment not related to the transplant that they're requiring her to have administered. I think it is unconstitutional. I think she's absolutely right. I think the lawyers are quite right to pursue that. And the Supreme Court, I think, is way off base again in not hearing this. Lewis is arguing negligence in the decision to remove her from the high priority transplant list. She says it amounts to medical malpractice. The JCCF is saying that Lewis will ask the court at an upcoming injunction hearing to grant an immediate reinstatement to the transplant list pending the result of the court action. So even though they're refusing to hear the case, the legal battles actually continue on this front. I'll tell you this is not only bad for unvaccinated transplant people people are unvaccinated who need transplants, and not only bad for Sheila, it's also bad for the country. The reason I'm saying that is because it's quite apparent that because of this decision, it will further erode trust and confidence in our legal system, in our government, in the country itself, the integrity of the country. People will view this as just a further example of corruption within the system. And in many respects, I would say that they are probably justified in feeling that way and in viewing it in this manner. It's very clear to me that this is unconstitutional. And the Supreme Court is hiding behind technicalities, loopholes, if you will, in order to avoid hearing the case and being required to rule on it. What political pressure is being applied? Why is this happening? I can't be certain. There's clearly activity going on behind the scenes, in my view. I don't understand this. Beyond the obvious, it defies logic. This decision defies logic, and it's tearing at the very fabric of the nation tonight. Mainstream media giving it some attention, but nowhere near the amount of attention that it deserves. Nowhere near. This is not justice. This is injustice administered by the Supreme Court. And I see no valid medical reason to deny the treatment for this reason. It's just so plain, so obvious, so discriminatory. This is, it's being described by some tonight as medical tyranny. I would say it is Supreme Court medical tyranny. It's also medical bigotry. It's clear that even though we are navigating our way through what is left of this pandemic, hopefully we're at the end of it and we're getting into some sort of an endemic phase of it, and the politics surrounding it and the restrictions and everything that has come with it, all the negatives. Hopefully, we are in the process of putting all that behind us, but it is very clear that we have not effectively achieved that. We're not at that point yet, not even close, because this is still going on. That's why, for me, this is the issue that remains front and center for me. I know that many others in the freedom movement have pivoted. They're focused on other issues like the Pride season and drag queen story times, and issues like that. But for me, this is what was the catalyst. This was the catalyst for the Freedom Convoy. This was the issue that was front and center for me, and I think for the whole country during the height of the pandemic. This is what resulted in lockdowns, masking, the decisions that led to the end run around the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and our constitutional rights. This is the issue, and it remains paramount even tonight. And it's clear that it is still in play. We're not over this. We're far from being over with this. It needs to be addressed. We will be revisiting this because the legal battles on all fronts, I think, are really only just beginning. Don't get discouraged. Even though the Supreme Court is refusing to hear this case right now, there will be other legal avenues that will be pursued, that are being pursued, and this is not the only case. Unfortunately, Sheila has very limited options at this point, and she is going to need the operation. So she's still faced with that horrible decision that she has to make: either cave and let them stick the needle in her arm, or she'll have to leave the country and get the operation someplace else, most likely in the United States. And that will be extremely expensive. And I am not sure where she is at with fundraising efforts or any efforts to arrange care outside of Canada's borders. It's not right. In a country that claims to have the best healthcare system in the world, this should never have happened. It should not be happening. I think it's absolutely disgusting, to be quite frank. And I'm using that word far more than I wish I was these days. Again, our thoughts are with Sheila this evening. I'll be right back. Don't go away.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
Okay, so let's talk about the filibuster. Pierre Poilievre's marathon speech in the House of Commons. The finance minister, Chrystia Freeland's budget has passed through the House, even though Pierre Poilievre, leader of the Conservative Party, vowed to do everything that he could to block it, and he certainly did. He did put in a good effort. But by a vote of 177 to 146, Bill C-47, the Budget Implementation Act of 2023, number 1, as it's titled, passed the final stage in the House with support of the Liberals and, you guessed it, the NDP, the New Democratic Party. The Conservatives and Bloc Québécois voted nay. But that just is not enough. This coalition Liberal NDP government just has too much power. And effectively, they create a majority when working together. So it's now off to the Senate, where a pre-study of the omnibus legislation is already underway. It's a 430-page bill. It was tabled back in April by the Deputy Prime Minister, Finance Minister, Chrystia Freeland, who unveiled a plan of continued deficit spending targeted at Canadians, their pocketbooks, our pocketbooks, public health care, and the green economy. So we're going to go further and further and further into debt. The approach to attacking inflation, which is caused by money printing and excessive government spending, is, I guess, for the Liberals and NDP to engage in more excessive spending. So there are also carbon taxes in there, taxes on taxes, carbon taxes on carbon taxes. And so while they give you money in one hand, they take it from the other through the taxation. So Pierre Poilievre last night stood up starting just around 7 p.m., as we told you. And I tried to find the feed last night. I could not find the feed while we were on the air. I found it shortly after we discontinued our broadcast. But he spoke nonstop in the House in a filibuster in an attempt to block all of this for 3 hours, 39 minutes and change. About 45 seconds, I think it was, 3:39:45. Nonstop talking. I mean, politicians generally have a gift for gab, but my goodness, to talk for 3 hours and 39 minutes and 45 seconds straight, you'd think he was on this show. Oh, yes. So we have some highlights from what he had to say, but where shall we start with Pierre Poilievre? Okay, let's start at the beginning. This is him kicking everything off, and then we'll get to kind of the reaction today. We'll run some little bits and pieces of what he had to say last night.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Here's the beginning.
It was good to hear from the honourable member for Timmins. He does make a lot of noise, but that's because an empty wagon rattles the loudest, doesn't it? That's okay. The people of Timmins keep telling me, I've been there 4 times in a year. They say they see more of me in the last year than they've seen of him in the last decade. And they're happy about that. Now, Madam Speaker, over the last 8 years, we've seen a massive, possibly unprecedented mounting of both public and private debt. We have to understand where we were, where we are, in order to understand where we are going. In the last 4 years, the government has doubled our national debt. That's at more than $500 billion of new debt. The Prime Minister has added more debt than all previous Prime Ministers combined.
True.
Now, he will be quick to point to many different excuses that have caused this run-up in our national debt. But I will point out that while there was a COVID pandemic, this is not the first crisis we've ever seen in the history of the world. And while there has been a war between Russia and Ukraine, this is not the first war ever fought in the history of the world. We had the great global recession under the previous Conservative government. We had 2 wars, one in Afghanistan, another that was in Iraq and Syria. And we managed to do so while managing to keep the debt the lowest in the G7 and to balance the budget, Madam Speaker. Other countries faced similar challenges without adding as much debt. For example, the Swiss, who are right in the center of Europe, closer to the conflict in Ukraine, and more dependent on global supply chains than we are because they are a landlocked nation surrounded by the European Union, were able to balance their budget, pay down their deficit, pay down their debt, and keep interest rates, inflation, and unemployment lower than all of the other OECD countries, proving that just because there is a pandemic or a war in one part of the world does not force a government to completely bankrupt itself. Now, let us recall that this Prime Minister added $100 billion of debt before before there was even the single first case of COVID, and he's added roughly $100 billion since COVID came to an end. And during the COVID pandemic, 40% or $200 billion of the new debt that he added had nothing to do with COVID whatsoever, according to the parliamentary budget officer. So the idea that we can blame all of this new debt on factors out of his control is provably false. He had a choice, and his decision was to spend without any thought for future generations or for the financial viability of the country. And in order to enable his spending, he unleashed nearly unprecedented monetary printing of cash. Now, this was done through something called quantitative easing, where the central bank purchased government debt at exceptionally high prices, driving down yields on that debt, ultimately pumping $400 billion of new cash into the economy in less than 2 years. Now, many will say they had no choice. There was a pandemic after all. Let's review that excuse. One, the pandemic did not bring a liquidity crunch. In fact, the economic phenomenon of the pandemic was that people had more cash than ever before, but they were banned from spending it. The problem was not the lack of cash, as had been the case in the previous great global recession. The problem was that people and businesses had bank accounts that were overflowing with cash with nowhere that they were allowed to spend it. In that kind of environment, the worst possible thing one could do is to print more cash and further overflow bank accounts with that money, which in the end, we knew would ultimately have led to inflation. And during that run-up of the size of our monetary base, that money printing, the Minister of Finance, always looking for the trendiest new slogan that would win her applause in Davos or in Brussels or at some other international symposium, said that all this cash that was filling up bank accounts was like a, quote, preloaded stimulus, something that could be unleashed.
They just make stuff
to
up as they go
revive a
along,
dead
man.
economy. Of course, the economy was only dead because governments had shut it down, not because there was a lack of cash with which to facilitate commerce. And so when the economy opened, all of that excess cash was unleashed, and the goods we buy, the interest we pay, were automatically and predictably bid up. Now, we do not fault the government for having created programs to pay people's bills while governments locked them down and prevented them from paying their own. Where we did object is to the government giving out $2,000 a month payments to prisoners, to dead people.
Okay, so we've heard much of this before. I will say this. He is such a good speaker, and he has such a firm grip and depth of understanding on these economic issues. It's impressive, I have to say. Not everyone can stand up and talk about economics in a way that people can understand and do it at length and in detail the way Pierre Poilievre can. I've heard economists who do a much poorer job than he does. I think he's very well spoken, a great orator, and he is a force to be reckoned with heading into the next election for sure. Here he is about halfway through. This is at 1 hour 28 and 1 hour 28 minutes 36 seconds. He's now been speaking at this point almost an hour and a half.
Things were provided to him at will.
And still going
so
strong.
He just doesn't know any better. But 6 months ago, his own finance minister admitted that deficits cause inflation, an admission that I found quite encouraging if she had stuck to it. But then the prime minister tapped her on the shoulder and said, they may cause inflation, but that's just fine. We're going to go on with $60 billion more in deficits. Is this a design? Is this part of his ideological objective? To quote the great John Maynard Keynes. Lenin is said to have declared that the best way to destroy the capitalist system was to debauch the currency. By a continuing process of inflation, governments can confiscate, secretly and unobserved, an important part of the wealth of their citizens. By this method, they not only confiscate, but they confiscate arbitrarily, and while the process impoverishes many, it actually enriches some, end quote. Is that actually the Prime Minister's purpose here? Is it to enrich a small group of people who can protect themselves by holding on to assets that are inflation-proof and protected while ripping away the purchasing power of Canada's working class? Is it all an accident? Is it a function of his total incompetence? Is it just because he is that naive trust fund baby? Or is it because he deliberately believes in an ideology that concentrates wealth and power in fewer and fewer hands? I want to know, what does my caucus think, Madam Speaker? Do they believe, A, by showing their hands, that it is incompetence that has led to this inflation? Or do you believe that it is the Prime Minister's mouth? So, hands up for incompetence. There's a third option. The third option is both. Both. Okay, both incompetence and malice. Madam Speaker, I've always said that I was a Democratic leader, and we hold votes right here in the middle of my speeches in the House of Commons to get these answers. We have a point of order.
The Honourable Member for Thornhill on a point of order.
The members opposite in the government don't know what it's like to sit in the front row, but their voices really carry from there. And I can't hear the member.
I have just asked precisely for order, and I would repeat the request that we maintain decorum and that the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Yeah, the opposition did try to
Leader of the Opposition.
get him off track, heckled him at times, tried to disrupt him. So we'll pull out of this, and we'll move ahead now to, this is now at 2.5 hours into the speech. He's been speaking now for 2.5 hours straight at this point. You know, this is what I would describe as Pierre Poilievre's Mr. Smith Goes to Washington moment. If you haven't seen that movie with Jimmy Stewart, it's a classic. It's an absolute classic. You got to check it out, and that'll give you a better sense of what this effort by Pierre Poilievre has been about.
Us from
2.5 hours in.
That is the reason why people come from such far distances to live here in this country. It is not because of any new grand invention that this Prime Minister has created. It is because people want to come here and live their own lives, make their own decisions. And that's what I want to empower them to do. You know, some people asked me when I was running for leadership of the party, yeah, but can you win power? Can you take power? The answer, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, is I don't want to take power. I'm running for Prime Minister to give power back. That's leadership right there. That's it. I don't believe that there is this special species of humans that are able to make decisions for everyone else. I believe that every human being is endowed with their own ability to make judgments about their own lives. Yeah. And when I go around the country and I meet with the mechanic who can take apart a transmission and put it back together, or the farmer who can master meteorology and economics and soil chemistry, and I meet with the waitress who can balance 10 plates on her hand, deal with 15 tough customers at once, go home, teach her kid math, and balance her budget on a minimum wage salary. I look at these people and I say, what business have I to run their lives? They know better than anyone else in this House of Commons. Our purpose is to put them back in charge of their own lives. I don't want to run their lives for them. I want to give them the freedom to make their own decisions. And that's why immigrants come here. They don't come here so that because there's these really brilliant politicians that can decide for them. They come to get away from politicians that think that they can decide for others. That's why they come to our country. So it takes a different kind of humility to be that type of leader, because, you know, if the government is small, then the leader's power is small and his reach is small. That's not what this prime minister wants. He wants big and powerful government because he thinks that it will make him big and powerful. It takes humility to be a leader who withdraws his control so that he can cede it back to the people to whom it truly belongs. It takes humility to lead a small and lean government, the small government with big citizens. That's the kind of humility that we need back in Ottawa, a humility that accepts the wisdom of the common people to decide for themselves. And that is the fundamental essence of why I'm running. What does this come down to in the specifics? It means limiting the government's role in the economy, not throwing away money on corporate welfare, but rather lowering taxes for all productive businesses. It means allowing workers and parents to...
So that's 2.5 hours in. And he continues. And, you know, he really, in my view, all those things he's saying truly reflect my view on the economy as well. I'm in step with all of that. I'm absolutely in lockstep with those views on the economy. Let me see here. Where did we leave off? Okay. So here he is now at 3 hours, 14 minutes. I mean, you try speaking for 3 hours and 14 minutes straight, keeping your thoughts straight, and just even, you know, keeping your voice. Just try not to not lose your voice after speaking for 3 hours, 14 minutes straight. And he's doing it in 2 languages.
Les aînés, les mères, les autres qui font le travail. Pourquoi j'ai pensé qu'on aurait dû mettre des pénalités pour ceux qui font trop de vitesse sur l'autoroute, ou pour ceux qui font des criminalités, ou pour ceux qui brisent les lois.
And I can't do that because I don't speak French anywhere near well enough to do it in 2 languages. Here he is now, 3 hours, 34 minutes, 47 seconds. This is him wrapping up.
C'est pour ça que nous demandons une politique fiscale qui remette le contrôle entre les mains de monsieur et madame tout le monde, des gens qui font le travail, des gens qui payent les factures. C'est la raison pour laquelle j'ai dit au Premier ministre que j'arrêterai ce discours n'importe quand s'il me donnait 2 garanties. 1, qu'il allait équilibrer le budget pour réduire l'inflation.
And you know, by doing this, he really stole the government's thunder, didn't he? He's upstaged the finance minister and the prime minister, the attention focused on him, even though mainstream media pretty much ignoring what he has done here.
Madame la Présidente, c'est ça nos buts, de remettre les gens en contrôle de leur vie. C'est le gros bon sens de tout le monde. Ramenons le gros bon sens.
Move forward just a little bit, get into the English.
Electricity from the sky and runs it through a copper wire to light it.
Here we go.
I could stop this speech on a moment's notice if the Prime Minister would walk in here now and just commit to me to make 2 commitments come true. 1, that he will balance the budget to bring down inflation and interest rates, and 2, that he will cancel all future interest for increases to the carbon tax. 2 simple demands, and I stop speaking. 2 demands, all it takes. Speaker, but he won't do it because he wants to take more from the people. He believes he knows better. He knows how to control their money and run their lives better than all of those ordinary people. Madam Speaker, these people are not ordinary. The waitress who balances 10 plates, serves 15 customers, helps her kid with math, balances her budget on a $15 an hour salary is not ordinary. She's extraordinary. The farmer who brings the food from his field to your fork is extraordinary. The electrician that captures the electricity from the sky and runs it through a copper wire to light up this room, he is extraordinary. These are the common people for whom we fight. It is the common sense of the common people united for our common home, your home, my home, our home. Let's bring it home!
Wow. I am impressed. Great speech.
Order. Okay. Order. Yes or no? Order. I believe. Order. I believe the Honorable. Order. I believe the Honorable House Leader for the official opposition is rising on a point of order. Yes, the Honorable.
Very much, Madam Speaker. I'm just wondering, given the late hour and the special order that we're operating under, we understand that at 11:45 you had to put the question, but I believe if you seek it, you might find unanimous consent to not see the clock and allow the honorable leader of the opposition to continue, because I think there are still some liberals that remain unconvinced, and I think he has some more.
The question is as follows. It being 11:46, pursuant to order made on Tuesday, June 6, 2023, it is my duty to interrupt the proceedings and put forthwith every question necessary to dispose of the third reading stage of the bill now before the House. The question is as follows. Ms. Fridland, seconded by Ms. Jasek, move that Bill C-47, an act to implement certain provisions of the budget tabled in Parliament on March 28, 2023, be now read a third time and do pass. If a member of a recognized party present in the House wishes that the motion be carried or carried on division, or wishes to request a recorded division, I would invite them to rise and indicate it to the chair. The Honorable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
And so he ran out the clock. And that was an impressive display, I must say. Most impressive. Did it achieve anything? I think so. It threw a monkey wrench into the budget process, drew more public attention to what is going on, and that's important. And here's Pierre Poilievre today talking about all of this.
Merci d'être venu. Donc, tout d'abord, j'aimerais dire que nos pensées continuent d'être avec ceux qui souffrent en conséquence et de pompiers. Donc, il nous faut. Hier, j'ai prononcé un discours de 4 heures afin d'empêcher très hypothécaire. Amis canadiens, je m'en inquiète d'été pour réécrire les maisons in the government in that regard.
Here we go.
A fire like this happens, coordination and action plan to respond to these types of fires.
So this was his scrum today, dealing with a variety of issues.
Assets, to have more federal assets, and to have better reaction the next time a fire like this happens. And I have here with me my Shadow Minister of Emergency Preparedness, Dane Lloyd, to answer more questions on our call on the government in that regard. Yesterday, I spoke for 4 hours to stop the inflationary tax hiking Trudeau budget. Now, I did this not just because I disagree with the irresponsible overspending that has caused the inflation. I've long believed that, but because I believe we're headed to a very serious crisis. Since the Prime Minister introduced his budget, there have been 3 major developments. One, the International Monetary Fund has identified Canada as the country most at risk of a mortgage meltdown because we have the biggest household debt of any country in the G7, $2 trillion of household debt. In fact, our households have as much debt as the entire GDP combined. Second, inflation is now again on the rise, something the Prime Minister promised was not going to happen. He claimed inflation was just going to fall. Now it's rising. A surprise, when you pour tens of billions of dollars more of spending into the economy, you get more inflation. And third, the unexpected increase in interest rates that is going to be another uppercut to overly indebted Canadians who already can't afford their bills. I want you to think about this for a second. If you have a family that's paying $3,000 a month on mortgages, and they experience what the Bank of Canada projects will be a 40% increase in their monthly mortgage payment, that's $1,300 a month, which is almost $15,000 a year, when half of our households don't even have $200 left in their bank account. What is going to happen over the next 3 years as all of these mega mortgages renew at these higher rates? We're going to have defaults. We're going to have mass fire sales of homes as people can't make their payment, and all they can do is put their house in the market, but there won't be anyone to buy them because no one else can afford to pay the rates either. This could be a major financial meltdown. This is not me saying it. It's the IMF. It's the Bank of Canada. And the Prime Minister has to recognize these facts have changed since he introduced his budget. And so I'm calling on him to do the honorable thing, to put aside his pride and his personal ego and cancel this budget. And he should also cancel his summer vacation. Conservatives are prepared to work all summer long to rewrite a budget that balances budgets in order to bring down inflation and interest rates, and that cancels all increases in taxes, because Canadians cannot afford to pay more. Mr. Trudeau, people's homes, their livelihoods are more important than your political posturing. They're more important than your summer vacation. So join with us. Put partisanship aside. Let's cancel the vacations. Let's cancel the $60 billion or $4,200 per family in inflationary spending. And let's get to work in this House to save the houses of those Canadians who are up to their eyeballs in debt after 8 years of your government. It is the responsible thing to do. I'm going to inherit this mess as Prime Minister, but I'm going to do everything I can as Leader of the Opposition to mitigate it and make sure that we save the homes, and the financial future of our people. It's the common sense of the common people united for our common home. Let's bring it home.
Sur le projet, excusez-moi, je pensais que vous aviez fini.
Oui.
Sur le projet de loi budgétaire.
You know, if you're a member of Parliament and you're standing behind your party leader or the Prime Minister, it's your job to just sit there and just nod. No matter what's said, just nod. Or if you're sitting in the House, just nod. Yes. Unless it's on the other side of the House and it's your opponent speaking, and then you have to do this. It's what he's saying, though, has merit. What we're looking at here is an eventual economic disaster. I keep talking about it. We don't know exactly when, but it's coming. And with this kind of spending, it's coming. And you talk about that war in Ukraine. That war in Ukraine is as much a war about the economy and the future of our economy as anything else. It's because the West is in decline. It's because the US dollar, which is the world's default currency, is under pressure. People are getting away. Other nations are trying to decouple from the US dollar. That's why it's this. The United States, NATO, has been engaged in exerting its power through its military. People, what's propping up the dollar? It's not gold anymore. It was attached to the price of oil, but that's not really viable heading into the future, especially as they force us to move toward electric vehicles. So what's propping up the dollar? I've said before, the arrangement that was made with Saudi Arabia back in the 70s, when they took the US dollar off the gold standard and attached the value to the price of oil coming from Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia said, if you're going to buy oil, you have to buy it in US dollars. I can go on and on about this, but the bottom line is it's the military. The Saudis got U.S. military protection in exchange for forcing people to buy oil in U.S. dollars, which made the U.S. dollar the the world's default currency. Now that's all changing. And with the massive ongoing deficit spending over almost $32 trillion in debt on the US side alone now, you've just heard about how the Canadian government under Trudeau has increased the debt on a massive scale. He's accumulated more debt than every other government in Canadian history combined just during his 8 years in office. The spending is out of control. It's resulting in massive inflation. It's a huge tax indirectly on the working class. It's gutting the working class. And there's so much irony in everything that we're seeing politically now. Conservatives have become the party fighting for the little guy, for ordinary common Canadians. If you go back to the 1980s, they were portrayed by the NDP. Conservatives were portrayed as the party of big business, of Wall Street and Bay Street. Not anymore. You see Pierre Poilievre standing up there fighting for the middle class, and that's exactly what he's done. This was his Mr. Smith goes to Washington moment. And he certainly has upstaged the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister / Finance Minister, Chrystia Freeland. And when the economy crashes, if it crashes, in a timely manner, and puts the feet of the Prime Minister and Freeland, the Finance Minister, when it puts their feet to the fire, you'll be able to point heading into the next election and say, see, told you. It's not clear how much longer this can be sustained, this level of deficit spending. But there is every indication that the Western economies are in the end stages here. And that is very apparent because of the level of deficit spending that is now required in order to continue to inflate the economic bubble. We'll see where it goes, but it's not looking good heading into the future. I will say that. And he did touch on the wildfire situation. Pierre Poilievre did. So let's look at the Alberta wildfire dashboard tonight. Unfortunately, we're seeing 72 wildfires in Alberta tonight. That's up almost about 12, I think, from yesterday. 12 new ones, 12 more. And the fires out of control, the big red fires here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35 out of control on the map, on the dashboard. That's up by about 10 or 12. So that's not looking good either. That's moving in the wrong direction. After cutting the number of fires in half out in Alberta, they're now moving in the wrong direction. And this also getting a lot of attention from mainstream media news on both sides of the border. But we do have this news conference, an update from British Columbia. Let me bring this up for you, where they also have wildfires burning. Where did we go here, folks? Let me get the right tab open for you. My apologies. I had it just a second ago. Here we go. Okay. British Columbia.
16th this year. We have also seen that heat events are becoming more frequent and projected to become.
So they're blaming it on climate change, of course.
Heat is now a part of our reality, and it is critical that British Columbians understand what they can do to protect themselves and their loved ones if these events happen. Our government has worked to improve public education, communication and services during heat events. This includes launching the BC Heat Alert and Response System, providing funding for local governments to proactively open cooling centers and provide transportation for vulnerable people, supporting First Nations and local authorities by introducing a new extreme heat funding stream under the Community Emergency Preparedness Fund, and releasing the Prepared BC Extreme Heat Preparedness Guide so individuals and families can take steps to prepare. During periods of hot weather, make sure you stay hydrated, find cool or shady locations, and check in on vulnerable family members and friends. I understand that heading into a potentially hazardous wildfire season can be unsettling for people, but I want to assure British Columbians that we are working hard to ensure communities are prepared and have the supports that they need in the event of a wildfire or other climate-related emergency. We urge individuals and families to take the necessary steps to prepare. By taking steps to be prepared and knowing where to find information, we can all gain a sense of control, sense of safety, and peace of mind. Be calm, be alert, be prepared this wildfire season. Let's enjoy the summer, but let's do it safely. And with that, I will pass it on to Minister Bruce Ralston, Minister of Forests.
Thank you very much, Minister Maw. Let me begin by recognizing the First Nations on whose territory we're gathered. I'm grateful to be speaking to you from the territory of the Lil'wat Nation and the Squamish Nation. As Minister Maw has said, there are 82 wildfires burning across British Columbia. We've seen major fires and impacts this spring, and let me begin by acknowledging all the people who've been impacted by fire and by smoke. It's extremely
82 in BC.
Smoke or near a fire, knowing that it might lead to an evacuation alert or order. I want to express my sincere thanks to the firefighters, first responders, emergency management teams, highway crews, and communities who are working tirelessly to keep people safe. The BC Wildfire Service is working around the clock to suppress fires, reduce impacts on communities, and share up-to-date information with the public. Several factors have combined to raise concerns about the current fire season. We had a very dry spring across the province. It was the hottest May on record, resulting in rapid snowmelt. The risk of flooding has gone down, but the prospect of drought is very high. As always, our experts, who you will hear from shortly, are able to track climate conditions against the buildup of drying and dead material on the forest floor and forecast areas of specific concern for potential wildfires. These conditions, if they persist, can impact how fast fires grow and how aggressively they burn. Lightning-caused fires typically peak later in the summer. We all remain very appreciative of the 2,000 BC Wildfire Service personnel dedicated to responding to the threat posed by wildfire. As Minister of Forests, I want to thank you to those workers and their families for supporting them through what's already a difficult fire season in parts of our province. Ahead of this year, we made critical investments, the largest in our province's history, to strengthen wildfire preparedness and response. Most importantly, we moved BC Wildfire Service to year-round operations to boost fire preparedness and planning. This year, BC Wildfire Service hired 100 new permanent staff and brought on 330 new recruits for fighting fires. We've invested in new structure protection units, drones, camp infrastructure, and mass water delivery systems to assist with fire suppression. We doubled the annual funding for wildfire prevention programs. BC weather stations have been upgraded, and innovative technology is being deployed to support predictive services and assist in preparedness, detection, and response. But there's still more to do. Given recent history and knowing that climate change will result in more impactful fires, we will keep working to boost the staff and equipment of the BC Wildfire Service. Let me also recognize the work of First Nations and local.
Okay, enough. Look. Media, focusing on this because it's good for ratings. People focused on it because the media is focused on it. Is it higher than normal? I would say yes. Statistically, we're getting more than normal right now. How are they starting? Generally speaking, we don't know. The officials investigating do not yet know. We do know, is my understanding, that at least one woman was arrested in, I believe it was Alberta. We drew your attention to that story. I think it was last night, and has been charged with setting 16 fires. We don't know what the outcome of that court case will be or what evidence might be presented, but that's what I understand. We do know statistically that between 50 and 60% of all wildfires, and I've laid this out with the data to back it up in a previous program, 50 to 60% of all wildfires are started by people through a variety of means. In some cases, it's careless smoking, discarding a cigarette butt, not putting out a campfire properly. We've talked about all of this. And in some cases, it is arson. People set fires intentionally sometimes. I can also tell you, with empirical evidence to back it up, and from personal experience as a journalist, that when there are fires and they receive a lot of media attention, it triggers people who are mentally ill, who are pathologically fire starters. It triggers them, and they will go out and engage in copycat activity and start fires. We're seeing actual, I would say, evidence of that, because tonight in Vancouver, let me see if I can find this story for you. Yes, here it is here, I believe. Yes. Now, this is not necessarily forest fires, but when you have this level of media attention focused on fires on this scale, I'm telling you, you're going to get more of this. Not only are you going to trigger firebugs and get them starting more fires, you're going to get media attention focused on that as well, which can actually result in more firebugs being triggered. So 11 fires intentionally set in one day, according to Vancouver fire officials. They were set in a matter of hours, intentionally set in Vancouver's downtown east side this yesterday. Out of the 11 fires the crews responded to, 4 involved outdoor rubbish, 2 were set in city-owned garbage cans, and another 5 burned inside dumpsters that were up against buildings, according to Vancouver Fire Rescue Services. Now, I can't absolutely say that the person who did this or the people who did this were absolutely triggered by the forest fires, but I can tell you without question that it's been my experience covering sometimes serial fire starters that they trigger other fire starters. It's an absolute fact. It's a weird psychological thing that triggers people with mental illnesses. Here's the Twitter account of Vancouver Fire Rescue saying numerous set fires in the downtown east side yesterday, including several garbage cans and dumpsters. This fire on the 600 block of Seymour Street was also intentionally set. And there are the photos from the fire service. And like any media event or serial media event like we're seeing right now, there's more and more media attention focused on it. The media plays it up because it results in more ratings, more clicks. And that, in the minds of people, amplifies the seriousness of it as well. They do it during snowstorms, tornadoes. Heck, you even saw it during the train derailments, didn't you? If you think back, aren't we all supposed to be dead by now because all the trains were being derailed? Oh my God. And I pointed out statistically even back then that really we weren't getting that many more train derailments at that time. But the theories that began to be distributed online were off the charts. The claims that it was a mass genocide effort by somebody to kill everybody by having all the trains derail, that they were going to kill us all with train derailments. We're still alive. And now the train derailment thing has been pushed aside. There was the one video that I showed you that was absolute bunk, where they showed some rail cars sitting on tracks in the middle of a field, and somebody made up a whole video about how that was proof that, you know, there was something really sinister going on. It was just trains sitting on a track, train cars sitting on a track in the middle of a field. And they made it seem like it was some sort of an attack. They weren't doing anything. There was nothing. It's the way it goes now, not only through media, but through social media, not through just the mainstream media. But you see this craziness that takes place on both sides, and people start to lose their minds. It's amplified now, worse than it ever was before. Even, certainly worse than it was during the pre-internet days. Bad enough even back then, but. And Chusey says, Rick, stop being bound and determined to be a corruption denier or apologist. We need to get over with and stop procrastinating. What would you like to get over with, Chusey? What would you like to do? Precisely, because I'm not apologizing for anything, and I'm not denying anything. I'm being very realistic. And you, sir, can go and, hunt down all the Knights of Malta and end the corruption once you round them all up and corral them into the Knights of Malta prison. But sorry, I'm not going to subscribe to that. But you keep on chasing those Knights of Malta down. And you report back when you get them all corralled, okay? And let me know. The Knights of Malta. Yeah, it's the Knights of Malta. They set them, didn't they? They bought a bunch of drones. And they set all these fires. I'm not saying I know how they were set. I'm saying we don't know. I had people sending me stories today, and I was going to pull them up, but they're ridiculous. This group of people is saying it's the government setting them. The government is saying it's all because of climate change. I have stories saying it's the Russians. The Russians sent in drones and started the fires by dropping, those little fire starter things that they use for prescribed burns. I get whatever, but it's the Russians. I've heard that it's the American government doing it. I've heard all kinds of theories. I'll tell you this, we don't know. They will investigate. They will give us whatever information they give us. We will get through this. I also showed you, and I could prove it. I could take photos like I showed you last night and manipulate them in Photoshop to make them look exactly the same, even here in this town where I live. They put tints on those photos to scare you. It's not a good situation. It's a bad situation. The fires are out of control in many areas. They are burning. It is bad. There is smoke in a lot of cities. But like everything else that we deal with through mainstream media and social media now, this particular story is the story of the news cycle, and it's just getting everybody jacked up. Stay calm. Give it a little time. We'll get through it. And we will survive. What was it also about diesel fuel? If you go back about 6 or 8 months ago, were we supposed to run out of diesel fuel altogether and die because they weren't going to be able to bring food to the grocery stores? Yeah, we were supposed to die from that. Train derailments were supposed to kill us because they were going to, it was mass genocide event, and it was all sabotage. Now, that story's kind of died off. Diesel fuel. We're supposed to be out of diesel fuel now, and the trucks weren't supposed to be running anymore. But somehow there's still fuel and the trucks are still running. And I said at the time that that was a false story because they weren't taking into account that there is still production at the refineries going on. We were supposed to be all dead and starving to death by now because of the food factory fires, which honestly did seem to be unusually high at the time. But that was in the news cycle for a while. And we're all supposed to be dead now because there isn't supposed to be any food left. But somehow people are still here. I know things are bad, and I know that the government is corrupt, and I know that we need to fix things. But the Knights of Malta are not all powerful. The Knights of Malta are not derailing all the trains. The Knights of Malta probably didn't start these fires. Can we please, for the love of God, at least here, within our family, try to keep our heads screwed on semi-straight, be skeptical, think critically, question everything I'm saying, question everything everybody's saying. That doesn't mean just dismiss one side and accept that the Knights of Malta are killing us all by starting forest fires. Or anybody. It could be Alex Jones. Alex Jones could be setting the fires. It could be anyone. It could be the bunnies that I see running rampant through my neighborhood. They've got a fiendish plot to set the forest on fire, to create less woodland area and more open fields where they can run free. I don't know. I do know we have a lot of bunnies in my neighborhood. Some of them have fangs. They're vicious. Globalist bunnies. Don't get me wrong. We've got problems. But we're going to be here tomorrow. We're going to be okay. We're going to get through this. The political opportunists on all different political sides are simply using this as a means to their ends. Whatever their agenda is, of course they're utilizing it to push their political agenda. The government is using it. It doesn't mean that the government went out and set all the fires, but because this is happening, of course, they're sitting there saying it's climate change because that's their agenda. And when they can point to it and say, see, if it wasn't for you driving your car, this wouldn't be happening. And this gives them every excuse to come after your car and to come after you and tax you more and tax you for heating your house, tax you for eating, tax you for breathing. Hold on to your wallets. And the more you are scared of this, the more you react in a strong way to all the amplified, distorted reality that they're trying to heap on you, the more you play right into their hands. You got to keep your head screwed on straight so you understand what's really going on. And just because somebody's in political opposition doesn't mean they're telling you the truth either. They're trying to disrupt the government and discredit the government. And they started pointing at it saying, the government's responsible for this. They started these fires. I don't know who started the fires. I just want to deal in facts. I'm pretty sure, though, that it's probably not the Knights of Malta. And I'm not denying anything. I'm just being absolutely realistic. But you believe what you want. When we come back, we'll talk about something that's more realistic. UFOs.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom. Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, so let's talk about real stuff. UFOs. Yeah, because, it's 2023. What is it? It's the 8th today of June 8th. So we're going to talk about UFOs. No, I'm not mentally ill. This is also in the news cycle still. I mean, it all started, back when the Pentagon, 2 years, whatever, a while ago, they said, oh yeah, well, we acknowledge that we do have unidentified flying objects that have been spotted by pilots, and they released video. And then that kind of went on for a while. And then, other things were reported. And then we got into this whole Chinese spy balloon UFO thing, and shooting them down. And, what are the UFOs, and more talk about UFOs. Yeah. And then this week we heard, another whistleblower come forward, government whistleblower, who says, oh yeah, they've got alien spacecraft in their possession, and they have the bodies of aliens. And it's getting mainstream media play, like a lot, not a ton, but enough. Joe Rogan's talking about it on his show too. Everybody's talking about it. We're talking about it here. Aliens, UFOs. And then overnight in Vegas. Unbelievable. Can't believe I'm talking about this, but we are. And I'm not saying that there aren't UFOs. There might even be aliens. I don't know. I'm just saying I don't know. But it's hard to believe that we're actually talking about it at this level, on this level. And it seems to me like maybe we're being played. But anyway, so this Las Vegas family claims that they saw aliens after, they saw people in this neighborhood, in this area, saw something falling from the sky. And this was actually April 30th. Okay. So around 11:50, Las Vegas Metro Police officers' body camera video recorded something streaking across the sky. So this story is just coming to light now, I guess. But this being reported just within the last day. Several people across Eastern California, Nevada, and Utah reported seeing the flash, according to the American Meteor Society. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know why this story is only coming out now, but this came out overnight, and we've got, I guess maybe because the body camera footage from the cops was released finally. And so it was even seen over the Las Vegas Strip. But what was it? We don't know. It's an unidentified flying object or aerial object, phenomenon, whatever. So there were calls made to 911, and this is weird. And I'm not sure what to make of this one, but some people this family called 911. The cops show up and they say, yeah, we saw some 8-foot creature in our backyard. And the cops are treating it seriously. I've got this local news report queued up here for everybody to partake in. Check it out.
o'clock. I'm Denise Valdez.
I'm Brian Loftus. A family says something crashed into their backyard, prompting them to call 911, saying they saw creatures walking around.
Our 8 News Now investigators digging into this for weeks now. And tonight, our David Sharns with the video you will only see on 8 News Now. David?
Right, Denise, sources
And
telling
here.
8 News Now investigators that several agencies believe something landed or crashed. Whether it was non-humans or not, it certainly scared the people living on this property. Now, before we show you that video, listen to their call for help.
There's like an 8-foot person beside it, and another one's inside, and it has big eyes and looking at us, and it's still there.
Okay, where is this on your property?
In my backyard. I swear to God, this is not a joke. This is actually, we're terrified of it.
So there's 2 people or 2 subjects that are in your backyard?
Correct, and they're very large. They're like 8 foot, 9 feet, 10 foot. I don't know. They look like aliens to us. Big eyes. They have big eyes, like I can't explain it. And big mouth. They're shiny eyes, and they're not human. They're 100% they're not human.
How do you know? Well, because they're like.
Well, the 8 News Now investigators
aliens,
obtaining video as officers then responded to the call you just heard. You'll see the officers also saw something in the sky that night, but the big question is, what was it, and is it all connected?
Leave her alone.
It's almost midnight on May 1st when a Las Vegas Metro Police officer's body cam catches this, something flashing low in the sky.
911 emergency.
Minutes later,
There's like an 8-foot person beside it, and another one's inside, and it has big eyes and looking at us, and it's still there.
someone calls 911 reporting 2 large figures in their backyard.
Big feet.
Right now.
The 8 News Now investigators obtaining another officer's video as he's sent to the Northwest Valley home.
I have butterflies, bro. I've only saw a shooting star. Then these people say there's aliens in their backyard.
By now, it's more than an hour after that bright light. Officers meeting up with the caller and his family.
What'd you see?
It was like a big creature.
A big creature?
Yeah, like around 10 feet tall.
I'm not going to BS you guys. One of my partners said they saw something fall out of the sky too, so that's why I'm kind of curious. Did you see anything land in your backyard, or
they see like a big? That's what they say. They see like a big something with light.
What I saw right now, I do believe in it.
Police walk into the backyard to investigate, but Metro blacked out that part of the video because it's considered private property. What's clear? They're taking this call seriously.
Hey, this might sound like a really dumb question, but did you guys see anything fall out of the sky?
Asking others what they saw.
I would normally discount it as nothing. However, seeing as one of my partners said they saw it too, only reason I'm actually investigating it further.
That investigation turning up no concrete answers as of Wednesday. Whatever or whoever fell into that yard, long gone within minutes.
Oh, hey. If those 9-foot beings come back, don't call us, all right? Deal with it yourself. I ain't dealing with that.
So yeah, this is quite weird, Brian was saying as we're watching this story. Now, we've been in contact with the family in that video, and as you heard in that 911 call, they seem very reasonable and honestly quite scared as you heard them in the call. No, they don't seem impaired in any way. And whatever crashed by the time that police got there was gone, but sources say that there's really no dispute. Something was in their yard. Exactly what? We do not know.
I mean, it's so interesting. So like the Metro officer sees something, the neighbor sees something. I mean, so what could it be?
Well, we know that there are obviously a lot of military bases around this area. George Knapp covers a lot of that stuff for us on the 8 News Now investigators. We're showing you drone video from above that area. And we know, of course, Creech not far away, Nellis Air Force Base not far. I checked in with them. They say they are not involved at all. And we are waiting to hear from the Pentagon as well.
And you talked to these people. It seemed completely legitimate to you. And do you have any personal thoughts on maybe what it was?
Right. So it seems from talking to our sources that something happened. There was obviously some flash in the sky. A lot of people saw it that night on the night of April 30th, early in the morning on May 1st. Did that exact thing land in their yard? I don't know. But
I don't know.
These people said they saw some SUV circling the area. Could this have been some piece of equipment that malfunctioned? Maybe they saw something and then someone came. I can't believe we're talking about this.
Right.
Someone came and
Picked it up.
retrieved it from the backyard in the SUV. We don't know. This all comes as a former high-level intelligence officer, a veteran, was on News Nation talking about how there is a program where the government collects some unidentified objects. So this might be that. We just don't know. We're going to work to find out, though.
And
Brian
no
Green.
substances. They were looking with clear eyes.
Very interesting.
Not big buggy eyes, though.
Oh, my
really
goodness.
unique. Thank you, David.
So they weren't drunk. They weren't high. At least not in any obvious way. And yes, we're going to talk about that whistleblower, the alien whistleblower, when we come back. Don't go away.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
So it might have been that guy right there, maybe his brother or cousin who was in the backyard. Remember that from the 1970s, the $6 Million Man? And when the show got to the point where they were kind of doing their version of jumping the shark to try and build ratings, they introduced Bigfoot into the storyline. This is what kind of comes to mind. That's the thing that popped into my head as soon as they said they had like an 8-foot or a couple of 8-foot creatures, big eyes in the backyard. Or maybe you're thinking more along the lines of a gray alien. We have these cliched images that are stuck in our minds when it comes to these things. And I don't mean to make light of the stuff, but I'm making light of the stuff because what else are you going to do? Live in fear that we're being taken over by the aliens? Here's the thing. If truly aliens have been among us, at least since the 1940s, because they have government programs where they've been collecting crashed alien spacecrafts and the remains, the bodies of aliens, and they've got them all stored away someplace, or if there are aliens, out there flying around and they've been here for all this time, well, I'm not that worried because they would have probably, incinerated us by now, unless they're just cultivating us, waiting to eat our brains or something. When the population reaches a certain level, maybe they're farming us. That's always a possibility. I think there was a Twilight Zone episode like that, if I'm not mistaken. Wasn't it the Twilight Zone where they were treating people really nice? I can't remember what the story was. Too many of these stories in my mind. Let's refer back now to that other story from earlier this week where that whistleblower came forward who claims to have had high-level intelligence clearance and is now supposedly blowing the whistle on the government programs with regard to aliens and alien spacecraft. This is on News Nation earlier this week.
Recently renamed the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO. And now in a News Nation exclusive, David Grush, an Air Force veteran, former member of that task force, and veteran of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, is formally blowing the whistle on secrets he says no one has ever shared publicly before.
You are one of the most trusted former intelligence officials in the US defense and intelligence establishment.
Yes, I was.
You were trusted with the most intimate secrets.
Yes.
Grush sitting down with award-winning investigative journalist Ross Coulthart, who's reporting for News Nation and has spent years reporting on the UFO question.
What conclusion did you come to at the end of your time on the UAP task force?
The UAP task force was refused access to a broad crash retrieval program.
When you say crash retrieval, what do you mean?
These are retrieving non-human origin technical vehicles, call it spacecraft if you will, non-human, exotic origin vehicles that have either landed or crashed.
We have spacecraft from another species.
We do, yeah.
How many?
Quite a number.
You're kidding.
Well, how many?
I thought it was totally nuts, and I thought at first I was being deceived. It was a ruse. People started confiding in me. They approached me. I have plenty of current and former senior intelligence officers that came to me, many of which I knew almost my whole career, that confided in me they were a part of a program. They named the program. I've never heard of it. And they told me, based on their oral testimony, and they provided me documents and other proof, that there was, in fact, a program that the UAP task force was not read into.
Grush alleges the U.S. government has recovered non-human craft for decades. He's filed a whistleblower complaint saying he gave what he calls the classified proof to Congress and the intelligence community inspector general. News Nation has confirmed David Grush's credentials and resume. We've not seen or verified the alleged proof he says he's provided to investigators. He says he can't show us the proof for national security reasons. He also tells us he's not seen photos of the alleged craft himself, but has talked extensively with other intelligence officials who have.
If you're right, if you're telling us the truth, everyone, the entire American public, has been lied to for decades.
Yeah, there's a sophisticated disinformation campaign targeting the U.S. populace, which is extremely unethical and immoral.
You are saying to the human race, for the first time, an official intelligence representative at a high level from the US government is saying publicly, we are not alone.
We're definitely not alone. Absolutely, the data points empirically that we're not alone, yeah.
Do we have bodies? Do we have species of
Well,
non-human?
naturally, when you recover something that's either landed or crashed, sometimes you encounter dead pilots. And believe it or not, as fantastical as that sounds, it's true.
It's also harder for people to wrap their minds around the concept of a crashed object from somewhere else. It's easier to accept that, yeah, we see things in the sky that we can't explain.
Journalist Leslie Kane broke Grush's whistleblower story this morning in the debrief. Ms. Kane's career has been mainstream and credible, having written a series of reports on UFOs in the New York Times dating back to 2017. He has the credentials, but there's no documents that he's handed over. There's no pictures. And as a journalist, you want to see documents, you want to see pictures. Does that raise a red flag?
Not at all, Brian. I mean, you mean documents that actually
I don't need no
describe
pictures,
the
no
craft?
Correct.
nothing.
Yeah, like government documents to be able to see it for ourselves.
Of course, don't we all want that? And the problem with that is all of that information is classified. You know, as we said in the story, everything that Grush told Congress and told the Inspector General of both the IC, the Intelligence Community Inspector General, and the Department of Defense Inspector General, all of that information is classified.
In 2017, Kane reported exclusively in the New York Times that the Pentagon had a secret UFO program. 3 years later, the Pentagon confirmed her story. Her latest report is even more explosive, but Kane says she has multiple sources who back up Grush's story.
I believe it because of all the sources I have who have told me the same thing. So who am I to doubt these very, very high-level people who have been inside these programs for decades, have done their work, and are all telling me the same thing? I mean, I don't think there's some kind of conspiracy among all these people who don't know each other to make something like this up.
So I've got to be blunt about this. You're not making this up. This is not a lie.
No, absolutely not.
Could be. It could be. I don't know. I don't know. All right. I don't know. What's wrong with saying I don't know? Why do I have to come down on one side or the other? Why do I have to pick a team? I'm either on team UFO or team lie. It's anti-UFO. Why do I have to be on one team? Well, can't I just say I don't know? Could be the Knights of Malta, or I could be an alien plant. Not like a vegetation thing, I mean, like, you know, people are worried about government plants, government operatives. I could be an alien operative. I could be sitting here right now sowing the seeds of disinformation for the alien forces, just trying to throw doubt on this so that you think that it's not real, even though you're looking at the evidence that isn't evidence, the evidence that's being presented without the evidence, like pictures or a firsthand account. It's secondhand, third-hand information coming from someone who apparently had some sort of government clearance. And why? And why is it all coming out right now? Could it have anything to do with the fact that we're at war in Ukraine, that the economy is about to collapse, that we're facing massive inflation? Could it be that the government is looking at particular groups of people who have a sort of an affinity for stories about aliens, who they view as some sort of a political threat, and maybe they want to feed this information into the news pipeline to get people all focused on stuff that's going to get them all excited, maybe a little disoriented? I'm speculating, and I'm only speculating in a way where I'm saying these are possibilities, but I don't know. I don't know. It could be the Masons. It could be the Rothschilds. It could be Klaus Schwab himself. Klaus Schwab probably is a Klingon, because when I look at those pictures of Klaus in his garb, his New World Order garb, it looks like something straight out of a Star Trek movie, man. I think he probably is a Klingon. And you know, there is an entire Klingon language. You can buy Klingon dictionary. Put the whole language, which just proves that it's real. Klingons are not a figment of our imagination. They are not just a Hollywood concoction. They are real. The language is real, therefore they are real. It's in a book. Star Trek II: Wrath of Khan is the best Star Trek movie of all time. I'll debate anyone on that. By far. It's just the best. Because the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the one. Or, if you go to the next movie, the needs of the one outweigh the needs of the many. And it was bad enough in the next Star Trek movie when they destroyed the Enterprise after Spock saved it and gave his life doing it. But they brought him back to life, which just shows you there is always, 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 always hope.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals. Defenders of individual rights and freedoms. Credible. Trusted. Grounded in reality. Maverick News. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
If the dose of doom and gloom that I've been dishing up so far hasn't been enough to get you all scared out of your wits, or upset, or triggered, or angry, well, this ought to do it. Here's the PM at today's pride flag raising. Here we go. All for you. Mr. Trudeau, come and raise the flag.
Quelle belle journée. C'est tellement un grand plaisir de vous voir ici. Merci d'être rassemblés en si grand nombre. Merci Sandy pour cette chanson, chanson magnifique qui nous a bien commencé. Madame l'aînée Sylvia Miracle, merci pour cette prière.
This is the wedge issue, guys.
There are always
It's a
new
wedge issue.
reflections on the alphabet that we use to talk about the 2S LGBTQI plus community. But I am very pleased that the latest words that we use as a government start with 2S, because as you say, that was at the beginning, at 2S LGBTQI plus communities. Merci aussi à Emma d'être ici pour animer cette cérémonie. C'est un grand plaisir de t'entendre. Je suis très content d'être ici avec toi, Marcy. Je veux saluer Blake Desjardins, sénateur Cormier, merci pour votre participation ici. Je veux aussi souligner évidemment tous les parlementaires, députés, sénateurs qui sont ici.
Speaking in French, doing it in two languages, driving that wedge in English and French.
Jagmeet Singh et Elizabeth May, merci, merci les deux.
Telling you, both sides entrenching on this.
Ensemble, mais,
they're going to ramp this up. This is going to get worse and worse, the conflicts that we're seeing over this issue.
C'est toujours magnifique à voir ce matin. We're here today to raise once again the pride flag on Parliament Hill. This is something our government proudly did 7 years ago. And every time we do it, from the very first time to now and to all the years to come, we're lifting high our belief that no matter your sexual orientation, your gender identity, or your gender expression, you belong here. You have a voice.
He's using it in his way.
Here. You are respected and heard, and
On
your
the other side, they're using it in their
isn't
way.
up for debate, not now, not ever.
It's not open for debate. See?
Although to pick up on what Emma said, when we first raised the pride flag on Parliament Hill 7 years ago, I think we all thought it would get easier after that moment. But we've been reminded by a rise in anger, hatred, ignorance, and intolerance. That things getting easier is not automatic. That fight for justice, for inclusion, for better is never done. And we are reminded all too often,
that's the
as Emma
trap.
said, whether it's online or in celebrating pride or in our daily lives, that hatred still has a very loud voice. But I think we also need to be reminded that those loud voices do not represent the vast, vast majority of Canadians. As you see from the parliamentarians standing here from coast to coast to coast, from every corner of the country, as you see from the millions of Canadians who step up to be allies, who stand against intolerance, Canadians stand for openness, for respect.
Listen
for
carefully to what
dignity,
he's saying.
For freedom, real freedom. These are the things we stand for. And yes, there
He's
are
laying the groundwork.
voices. And there is anger out there.
It's
But
already
there
been
is
laid.
also so much love
It's
and
a trap.
support from so many Canadians, coast to coast to coast. And I hope on this day, on this season, and this year and years to come, everyone remembers how many allies and friends they have out there across the country and around the world. Depuis notre arrivée au pouvoir, notre gouvernement a fait de la protection des droits et des libertés des personnes de LGBTQI+.
I'm telling you, he's here we go.
innately human experience there is.
Says love is the most innately human experience
Hatred
there
and
is.
discrimination that need to be taught. In Canada,
Hmm.
you should always be able to love with complete freedom. That's what our government and all of these allies behind me from multiple parties will always fight for. Merci beaucoup, mes amis. Happy Pride.
See, when I say that he's laying the trap's already been laid. It's been set. And that's because they have this legislation in place now, okay? It's like if you protest, if you go out there, then they just point to you and say, look, these are the hateful bigots that we told you about. You go out there, you get, into confrontation, like, do what you want, man. I'm just telling you that's the strategy. Like, I don't think the government really gives a damn about people one way or the other, to be quite honest with you. They're looking at the polls, they're looking at demographics, they're looking at this issue. And like I say, Trudeau's going to use this as the wedge issue. This is the wedge issue. It's like he knows this gets, a certain group of people really, really, really upset, in particular, some Christians. And instead of tolerating their point of view, no, he takes the flag and flies it right in their faces, because he knows that those people also represent a large voting bloc that is, generally speaking, opposed to him and his policies. So it's his way of kind of poking you in the eye. And he's getting, I think they're getting the response that they want, and then people fighting. Yeah, and I know, I mean, I get why people are upset, and I get you don't want to give them an inch. But I'm just telling you, you got to get smart about this stuff. Don't get mad. There's an old saying, don't get mad, get even. And I'd say, if you're opposed to some of this political stuff, I don't know, just whatever. They're always 2 or 3 steps ahead, maybe 10 steps ahead. And I'm not against it. I don't even want to talk about this stupid issue anymore. Because as much as the prime minister is sitting there saying, there's so much more work to be done because, we need to bring people together. No, man, it's by you flying the flag in the face of people and paying drag queens to go into schools. He's again fueling the division while pretending or putting on this facade of inclusivity and tolerance. It's not. It's actually the opposite. It's just so typical of government these days, and it's so clever what he's doing. They set it all up so that everybody fights. Sometimes the best thing to do is just ignore and deal with issues in other ways. But hey, man, what do I know? Well, you'll see. You'll see going into the next election. You ain't seen nothing yet. It's gonna get. It's gonna be worse, much worse.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
Now, I'll talk about this just a little bit more, and I'm going to talk about it in the context of what's going on in that by-election out in Portage-Liscar in Manitoba, where Maxime Bernier of the PPC was parachuted in as a candidate, couldn't win in his own riding in Beauce in Quebec, so they've parachuted him into Manitoba, where there's this by-election happening. If he wins, he would be the first PPC member of parliament, but he's up against a strong conservative candidate. And I've noticed out there that the issue that is being focused on is exactly what we've been talking about. That seems to be the one that I keep hearing about coming even out of that riding. Fair enough. Employ your own campaign strategy. Do what you want. But when I'm looking at the polls, I'd say that Max is in trouble. I'm not sure that focusing on this issue is a winning strategy for the PPC, for the freedom movement. I don't think it's a winning strategy. I think it's a trap. And that's what they've been focused on out there. And I don't think it's working. Here's the 338 poll right now, and I'm going to show you why. This is political reality, okay? Portage-Liscar, conservative candidate, 54%, plus or minus 8. The PPC polling at 18, plus or minus 6. In second place, but that's not even as much, I don't believe, as the local candidate for the PPC got in the last election. I think they came in second out there. I think it was the second best campaign nationally, and the one in Chatham-Kent-Leamington, here in my riding, where Liz Valley ran, I think that was the third best for the PPC. Only 18% polling, and that's the leader of the PPC right now. Strong conservative riding, previously held by Candace Bergen, conservative member of parliament, now out because she left. This riding opened. Now we have the by-election. Conservative Party of Canada at 54% polling strong. Does Max have any chance of winning this? I mean, he's portraying this as a two-horse race. He's appealing to voters again now. I keep seeing media reports where he's saying, don't believe in the vote splitting. There is no split vote. And I get that argument. But people are, pretty committed from what I'm seeing in this polling, and it hasn't changed much since the beginning of the campaign. From the beginning to now, it's been about the same. That's just in the raw percentages, okay? Now, if you look at the projections, here's the projection for the 338 poll. CPC is a safe hold. That means that as far as their projection is concerned, the Conservatives are going to hold on to this riding. And how certain are they of that? They're 99% certain. 99%. In other words, as far as the pollsters are concerned, like this is so heavily weighted in favor of the Conservative candidate in terms of the response from the polls that they are 99% sure that the Conservative is going to win this riding. And this was supposed to be a riding that was possibly the easiest one in the entire country for Maxime Bernier, a former Conservative, now leading the PPC, People's Party of Canada. It was supposed to be one of the easiest ridings for him to potentially score a victory. This, for me, suggests that the PPC's got big problems. I think it's incorrect campaign strategy. They're picking the wrong issues. They're making a lot of mistakes again. Making a lot of mistakes. If he can't win that riding, I don't know where that leaves the party. I'm not sure where that leaves him. He's lost and lost and lost, and now he's losing potentially again. I mean, I'd love to see Maxime Bernier get elected. But somebody with some real political sense needs to take that ship and turn the rudder just a little bit, because they're not heading in the right direction. That's political reality. You might not want to hear it, PPCers, and I've been part of the party myself, but that is the political reality. It might feel like you're winning. It might feel like you're making progress on an issue like this one, but it's not the winning issue. You might be making some progress by convincing some school boards, I'll give you that, to not fly your flags, so you're not fly those pride flags or take different actions, blah, 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 blah. You've got a few little victories here and there, and I applaud anybody that wants to go out and get involved in local politics at the school board level, municipal councils, whatever you want to do. That's the way to do it. No question about it. But if you want to win at politics, you have to pick the right issues, hammer home specific messages. You have to win the election, not just an argument. And you have to win the hearts and the minds of the voters. Clearly, that's not happening out in that riding of Portage-Lisgar. We'll see how it plays out by the end. Maybe they'll pull a rabbit out of their hat. I'm not sure. If they do, I hope it's not one of the fanged bunnies that I see hopping around, the evil ones in my neighborhood. I hope not. They're vicious.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals. Defenders of individual rights and freedoms. Credible. Trusted. Grounded in reality. Maverick News. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Too late. Too late. Too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
And Choosy, I love you, man. And if you want to believe the whole Knights of Malta thing, that's cool with me. You can keep on talking about the Knights of Malta. And if you want to call in here and talk about the Knights of Malta, I'm sure you will. And I'll still put you on. That's all. That's okay. And I do have a bunny story that I'm going to share with you. This is not news, but this too is reality. There are so many bunnies in my neighborhood. Maybe it is news because I think we have a record number of bunnies. I see them all day long now, not even just at night. They seem to come out at night but I see them all during the day. And I take my dog for, multiple walks during the day around the neighborhood. I see so many bunnies. Huge numbers of bunnies. I mean, they're having a lot of fun. You know what bunnies do? Well, they've been pretty frisky, obviously, because I see so many of them. But the other night, my wife came in and she said, "You got to go save the bunny." And I said, "What are you talking about? The bunny is caught in the fence." And my dog had been in the backyard and it was dark. And the bunny, trying to escape, went through a chain link fence. But its great big hind fat, chunky, fat bunny legs couldn't fit through, and he got stuck in the chain link fence. It was pretty sad. So I went out there with a flashlight and I found the bunny and I tried to get the bunny out of the fence. And the bunny was so stuck. I couldn't get him out one way or the other. I couldn't pull him back and I couldn't push him forward. And he was scared. The little guy was so scared, but he didn't have fangs. So I was like, okay, this one's the fangless one. One of the fangless ones. He's the good kind of bunny. He's the kind, gentle, fuzzy wuzzy bunny. So I got to save this one. I mean, if he'd had fangs, I probably would have ate him. Okay, I probably would have put him down and brought him in and skinned him and made myself some rabbit stew. But no, he was a nice guy, no fangs. But I couldn't know what the heck to do. So I went and I got, and I went back into my garage and I got all these tools and I'm like, I got to get him loose somehow out of this chain link fence. And of course the dog was inside and the dog didn't hurt the bunny too much, but he was actually starting to bleed around his legs because he was struggling so much to get out. And he was so scared and I felt so bad for the bunny. So I had to do something. So I went out there and I couldn't find my bolt cutters. Couldn't find anything really to, delicately cut the thing. So I went out there with some tin snips, but the chain link fence just too thick. I couldn't get through that wire. I didn't have any choice, guys. I just didn't have any choice. So forgive me. So what I had to do, I had to do it. I mean, what are you going to do? The bunny's caught, right? So I ran an extension cord out there and I got out my grinder with a cutting wheel, put the flashlight down, put on all the safety gear, got all geared up, put my hearing protection on, got my safety goggles. Oh, I was looking real redneck. I bent down and I fired that grinder up with the cutting wheel and I got in there and it was like, I have to tell you, I'm so impressed with myself. It was like precision surgery. Zing! Cut through that wire. But the bunny wasn't moving. And I moved all the wire. I twisted the wire off the bunny. He was not moving. My heart sank. I was just about in tears. I did my best, folks. I did my best to save the fuzzy wuzzy bunny. But the poor little guy had been so scared. And when I fired up that grinder, it was loud and it growled and it howled in the smoke-filled night. Scared that bunny. And I can understand why, because that grinder with the cutting wheels right down in behind him, he didn't even know it was coming at him in the dark. He was motionless. So I pulled him out and I massaged him and I apologized. I pumped him. And he started to move. He was so darn scared. He went and fainted. Passed out. But he came back. Now, I don't know. Maybe he died from him. Maybe he had like a near-death experience and an out-of-body experience. Maybe he was up looking at me from above. He's probably thanking me for not eating him. Maybe he went back into his bunny body. Or maybe he just passed out. Maybe he just fainted from the fear. Maybe he was just asphyxiated from all the wildfire smoke in the atmosphere combined with the fear. And maybe that was just too much and it overcame him. And he just went, ah! 2 X's. I saw him. 1 X on one eye, 1 X on the other. And I thought he was a goner. But nope. Came back. And I looked up and I thanked the Lord and I said, Fuzzy Wuzzy, you ain't no bear. Fuzzy Wuzzy, you got lots of hair. Fuzzy Wuzzy, I care. Run free, Fuzzy Wuzzy. And I packed up everything and I turned off my flashlight and Fuzzy Wuzzy hopped off into the yonder night, disappearing into the mist and the fog of the wildfire smoke. Wiser knows now to stay away from my dog. Don't go near my dog. He's a herder. He's a border collie. He'll herd you right into the fence. And when that happens, it ain't cool. You get trapped, and then the big bad dude with the grinder comes out and scares the living crap out of you. Well, we got lots of bunnies in my neighborhood. I'm not sure what adventure awaits me next, but whatever it is, I guarantee in a few minutes, because I'm going to end this here broadcast, and I'm telling you, I'm about to have another adventure, because when I go take my dog for a walk around the neighborhood in just a few minutes, there are going to be a whole bunch of those Fuzzy Wuzzy bunnies all hopping around out on the grass and out behind the fences and the bushes and the mailboxes and every other darn thing that they can hide behind out there. And I tell you this, I'm going to be having my eyes and my ears wide open, because it ain't the Fuzzy Wuzzy ones I'm worried about. It's the ones with the fangs. I'll be back tomorrow night, folks, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as long as I survive the walk. Catch you on the flip side. I hope. Or it could be the aliens. They might come and eat my brains.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.